Everything that you thought you knew was wrong. Are there any sweeter words in the English language? There's a tantalizing possibility that your whole world will be flipped upside down. If that promise comes true and your worldview is reshaped, then the experience will be inescapably transcendent. This is markedly different from the saying that everything you believe is wrong. Your values and who you are as a person are difficult to uproot. But for the ideas that you aren't attached to, there's a great joy in disregarding them. Once you grow up, the world rarely throws you for a loop, but when it does, there are a few feelings that can match that. It's like a drug. Your head spins as you realize that you'll never see the world the same way again. There's a simple way to challenge the things you thought you knew without challenging your beliefs. You can substitute a radical reshaping of your worldview with a radical substitution of the way you view a piece of media. Fan theories promise a transcendent high at a low cost. If you only hear what they have to say, then a whole new world will open up to you, and you'll never see your favorite piece of media the same way again. Is that high actually worthwhile though? What more do you sacrifice when you look at media through this lens? Perhaps you're playing with forces that you don't understand.
I think this theory is very bad.
A theory. A film theory.
Not to tell you what the series really means.
I think it's cool that you do, interpretation for kids.
I have a long and complicated history with fan theories. My very first post on Reddit was a "Don't hug me, I'm scared" fan theory, in case you were wondering if I've always been like this. In it, I posited that "Don't hug me, I'm scared" actually takes place in the Matrix. I know, hold your applause. I'm the genius that figured out that the phones and the CGI actually indicated that the show took place in the Matrix. I also started watching Game Theory before it had 1,000 subscribers. Now, I was not among his first 1,000 subscribers because he put a bunch of butts in his videos, and I didn't want to be caught being subscribed to a guy like that. Anyway, growing up, Game Theory was one of my favorite channels. I didn't even care that I hadn't played most of these games. There's a certain structure of storytelling that I really enjoyed, though. You start out with a logical problem that needs solving.
Based on her wounds, should Aerith have died?
Lay out your evidence.
There's a bit more work that needs to be done here.
And then come to a solution that ties all that evidence together.
Among Us actually takes place in space.
There's something inherently exciting about that structure of storytelling. It's a mystery solved by a real person. It wasn't just MatPat, though, and not everything he does is a fan theory. Any fan theories I could find were fair game. I was on a constant hunt for the feeling created by them. Anyone who offered it had my full attention. Something changed though. Over time, I became an N-lob, not like other boys. I became too cool for fan theories. Yeah, I'm not like other boys. They like making fan theories. I do interpretation and analysis. They wear short skirts, I wear t-shirts. I started to wonder where this part of me came from. Why did I feel superior to people who made and enjoyed fan theories? It wasn't that long ago that I was just like them. I don't think this superiority complex is a good thing, but it's something I've had a hard time shaking. To really look into why I developed this superiority complex, we need to look into how I got here. If I want to move beyond that, then I need to ask the question, what ruined fan theories for me?
I have a solution to everything, and well, I didn't really have any story to tell.
Okay, so just as a disclaimer, the ambition that I had for this video is not entirely how it turned out. I had originally conceived of this video as some sort of preliminary aesthetic philosophy on fan theories. The Dunning-Kruger effect kind of kicked my butt here. Although my initial goal was some sort of big philosophical work, it ended up being more personal than I originally expected. I'm still proud of this video, but I just wanted to acknowledge the mixed intentions that I had going in. Because it's very rooted in personal experience, but I was trying to get at something greater, and I think it shows in some areas. Anyway, let's get into the problem with fan theories. Also, for most of these fan theories, I will be skipping over some of the evidence, so don't take my explanations as the full picture. I'm just trying to give you a general idea of the fan theories that I'm talking about. I'm not denying that fan theories can be fun, but after immersing myself in them, I had a hard time believing that they could be anything more than that. Fun is fun, and fun is good, I want to make that unequivocally clear. But are fan theories good for the conversation in regard to art as a whole? One of the things that I hate about CinemaSins is that it teaches you to treat nitpicking as a value. When you watch movies as a CinemaSins fan, you don't think about the movie on its own terms, but rather you think, wow, I wish I was as good at nitpicking as CinemaSins. You start actively looking for nitpicks instead of enjoying the movie on its own terms. The same problem can arise from consuming fan theories. You start to see every event in the story as a clue. It assumes that there are hidden secrets in every story just waiting to uncover. Some artists do make their stories with that in mind, but the vast majority of the time, that's not the case. Not every story needs a dark secret. Often, it's the fans of a work who end up hating fan theories the most. They have a strong idea of their relationship with a work and don't want that idea to be changed. They stand as the ultimate guardians of a work of art's presence in pop culture. They refuse to let it be tainted by an idea that doesn't stand up to what they know or want to believe about a series. Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game that you've probably heard of. A major part of the game's presence in pop culture at large is dependent on fan theories. The series developer seems in part to not have wanted all of this fan theory attention. In Five Nights at Freddy's Custom Night, if you get killed by the purple hippo, you're treated to one of a set of 4 monologues by the purple hippo. In these monologues, it seems very likely that these are Scott Cawthon, the developer of these games, thoughts about fan theories. In some ways, I consider Scott to be one of the most important thinkers about fan theories alive today. There are few people who have been affected by fan theories as much as this man. So, when the hippo says these things, I think it's revelatory of the true nature of fan theories.
I said, Orville, I have a story. What's the significance of the story? And Orville, not every story has to have significance, you know? If you try to read into every little thing and find meaning in everything anyone says, you'll just drive yourself crazy.
There are 4 of these roughly 3-minute monologues, which are all thinly veiled reflections on fan theories. And it's very true. You can get as much meaning as you want out of something, but you can also look for secrets that just aren't there. It's like shoveling into an inch of dirt and hitting stone only to keep trying to dig. For Scott, it kind of turned into this endless loop, where people kept misinterpreting his games, so it kept adding more lore to clarify, only for people to get more confused.
I didn't mean to say that the breadcrumbs were frozen when I said I told you they're frozen. I'd been referring to the birds.
If this developer, whose empire was built off the back of fan theories, rejects them, then what's the purpose? Dan Olson also has a video where he discusses his frustration that plot is often seen as a mystery to be solved, while completely disregarding things like metaphor and theme.
This is a consistent feature within modern film criticism, which is in a distinct phase where the loudest voices in film discussion approach plot as a problem to be unpacked and solved.
Trying to decode the plot often diminishes the story that the creator was trying to tell. When you try to figure out what's really going on in the story, you risk the possibility that you won't be able to tell what's going on in the story at all. You could make the argument that all of my videos take place in a dream. That would explain the flying text and pictures in the air. But I'm not making these videos so that you think they take place in a dream. That would be stupid. If you watch my videos in that light, then you miss out on the very obvious thing that I'm trying to do here. Also, I just generally don't like speculating on future events and stories. It's lost its magic to me. There was a time when I really enjoyed trying to figure out what would happen next in a given story, but it's just lost its appeal. I'd rather be content with the information I have and be surprised when a movie comes out. Why do you need to be right about what happens next in a story? Is the movie itself not enough? Before it came out, I had a friend who constantly pestered me, trying to get me to speculate on what would happen in Avengers Endgame. I didn't really care to hazard a guess. He would say, oh, I bet Iron Man's gonna die, but I just didn't care that much. It feels like a lose-lose. Either you're right and the movie disappoints you because it couldn't surprise you, or you're wrong and it disappoints you because it doesn't meet your expectations. Also, I feel like this friend was starting this conversation as like a manhood measuring contest. Like, I think he was trying to bait me into disagreeing with him so he could bring it up later if he was proven right. Yeah, weird friend. Also, I kind of hate talking about media with kids who watch MatPat's videos. Often, the kids internalize MatPat's interpretations as the only way to understand that piece of media. It kind of kills the discussion. If I don't buy a particular interpretation, then I'm told in no uncertain terms that I'm wrong. It kind of goes back to the whole cinema sins thing. These kids' brains are so addled with fan theories that it becomes their main form of engagement. To a certain extent, I get it. Kids are going to be kids. Their critical thinking skills aren't going to be fully developed. At the same time, I question whether this is the right way to teach kids how to enjoy art. In some ways, I think it's great that they're engaging, but I'm not sure if giving them an explanation that closes their minds to possibilities is the best way of going about that. It kind of makes me wonder if fan theories are just entry-level interpretation. Maybe they have mass appeal, but aren't substantive beyond that. I want to be clear that I don't like that conclusion. I don't like crapping on things that people enjoy. Just because I stopped enjoying something doesn't mean that you have to. At this point though, we'll have to save that thought for later. Let's take a look at some bad theories in order to dive further into the problem with fan theories.
I've connected the two dots.
You didn't connect shit, but
I've connected them.
Generating speculation can backfire spectacularly if you handle it poorly. I'm sure you can think of innumerable examples where a serialized story generated a ton of buzz with its mysteries, only to disappoint. Sherlock has an end-of-season cliffhanger where he jumps off a building and then somehow survives, and when we get to the next season, we find out that the way he survived was... Screw you! You're stupid for wanting to know, you idiot!
If you'd pull that off, I'm the last person you'd tell the truth.
You fell into our trap where we ask a question and then make fun of you for trying to answer it. Who is Snoke? He's dead, that's who. J.J. Abrams is known for setting up interesting mysteries but not knowing how to resolve them. Take Lost, for instance, where... I'm gonna be honest, I've never seen Lost, and I don't plan to watch it. All I know is that it had some really cool mysteries and then squandered its potential. And that's the problem. A story can waste its potential. Just because a story promises interesting twists and turns does not mean that you'll be satisfied with the answers. When we engage in speculative fan theories, we're putting our trust in the story that it will satisfy us, but that isn't always the case. So, the reason I'm buying my album wall isn't just to show it off. I'm actually talking about two of the albums on here. I always love seeing comments that say they're excited to see a certain album or artist. I've been quite surprised by the number of Five Iron Frenzy fans that I've found.
There are dozens of us! Dozens!
I've also been surprised that zero Relient K fans have shown up, even though they're in a similar niche but are far more popular. I suspect that may be due to the fact that one of the albums on my wall is their most hated album. Collapsible Lung is the black sheep of Relient K's discography. Most of their fans hate this album. I love it though. Funnily enough, it's the album that got me into albums. This whole wall can be attributed to this one album.
Getting by with my collapsible lung.
As stated earlier though, many Relient K fans did not like Collapsible Lung. It was too much of a departure for this Christian rock band to make pop music about a wide variety of girls.
I don't know why the band decided to go so far out there.
It included such scandalous lyrics as references to taking a girl home and calling a girl sexy. Honestly, that's so upsetting. Who would listen to music like that? A couple months later, I started listening to the album that came before, Forget and Not Slow Down.
I'd rather forget and not slow down.
The more I listened to it, the more I started to form connections between it and Collapsible Lung. Forget and Not Slow Down is a concept album, dedicated entirely to processing the complex emotions of a breakup. My synapses fired into overdrive as I realized that these two albums told a story. The first song in Collapsible Lung references a previous breakup, but looks forward to a new relationship to solve that pain. Throughout the album, it describes several different relationships, all of them toxic for different reasons. With all of those toxic relationships, the album also describes a lot of heartbreak. It's clear that this lifestyle is not working for the narrator. The album ends with a song about settling down with one girl and learning to live a simple life in spite of all the mistakes that you've been making. Then, Relient K released a new single, Bummin', and what do you know, it's about trying to move on from your mistakes. Then the whole album, Air for Free, comes out. Wouldn't you know it, it's about moving on from your past mistakes and trying to live a simple life. I'm a genius! I've cracked the code! I genuinely wanted to make a video essay about it, but I hadn't learned to accept myself enough yet to do that, and I also didn't know if there would be an audience for it. But If you were wondering if I've always been like this, then you have your answer. Opportunity came knocking though. One day, I made a Twitter post that listed Savannah by Relient K as one of my top 3 favorite songs. I got a like from an account called Sadie Hawkins Pod, which, if you haven't already guessed, is a Relient K fan podcast. Now, if you don't think that a deep dive into music that I like is something that I would enjoy, then you clearly haven't been paying attention to this video. Hey, I see that you're multitasking right now. I'm gonna need you to stop knitting so that you look at me when I'm talking to you. I start listening to this podcast and surprise, surprise, they hate collapsible lung. That's fine. I'm a big boy. I can cope with opinions being different than my own. In one episode, though, they invited anyone who was a collapsible lung fan to leave them a voicemail. I was quite excited to do so and left them a voicemail.
Recently, I listened to an episode and you said, hey, if you're a collapsible lung fan, you should call in. And I was like, hey, that's me.
As I rambled, I included a little detail that would soon have a profound impact on my mental well-being.
I also have a whole essay I could write about how it connects to Forget Not So Down and Air for Free.
They were, of course, very nice about the whole thing.
And yeah, please do send that in because we would love to read that and possibly read it on the show if you're cool with that.
Don't give me that kind of permission, I will take it. I also flagrantly ignored one of the hosts, Dan, saying,
because we've heard that thing before.
I got cooking and typed up a giant essay summarizing my thoughts. In case you were wondering if I've always been like this. They promised that they would talk about the essay as soon as they talked about collapsible lung again. Over the weeks, I kept going through their backlog as I anxiously awaited for them to talk about my revolutionary essay that was going to blow their minds. As I kept going through their backlog, though, I discovered an unfortunate truth. I got this theory from an article. It wasn't my theory at all. I completely forgot about this article and appropriated the theory as my own. By the time I had called in, Sadie Hawkins Pod had already seen my theory and disproven it to their own satisfaction. In a panic, I asked them not to read my essay on the show. I was so embarrassed. From that point on, they haven't given any credence to the theory and expressed frustration every time it's popped up. They also talked to one of the band members and officially deconfirmed it.
And I'm like, but they'll say that.
It's not a story.
No.
Every time they complain, I have a hard time feeling like it's not directed towards me. I don't blame them though. I've accidentally ostracized someone I know in real life because of the content I've put out, so I really have no room to complain. It seems as though they feel this theory poisons the well of the conversation. They've already had this conversation and had to immerse themselves in it again because of me. It's obnoxious to see an interpretation that you don't give any credence to given special spotlight by so many people over and over again. I think ultimately that's a huge risk of fan theories. If an alternate explanation is widely accepted and propagated, but ultimately disproven, it takes the conversation hostage. It demands that you participate in a dead discussion. That ground has already been tread. We don't need to discuss that anymore, but here we are again because some goober thinks he's a genius. Have you ever talked to someone who had a really bad idea that they're really excited about? It's obnoxious because they really want to talk to you about it and get you to see things their way even though you know better. That's the risk of fan theories. If they are convincing but ultimately don't hold water, then the people who know better have to tread the waters of this fruitless discussion over and over when they would quite frankly rather talk about other things. With this in mind, it makes sense that game theory has had some infamously controversial videos over the years. Probably the most notable one is MatPat's theory that Sans is Ness. Now, if you just watch the video casually and maybe only played Undertale once, then it's a mildly interesting theory. It uses random connections between both of the games to point to Sans from Undertale being Ness from Earthbound.
If we took it one final step and said that Sans happened to be Ness.
It points to random pieces of dialogue that imply that Sans is human. Then it looks at random items that belong to Sans and connects them to items that appear in Earthbound. Lastly, it calls back to a fan game that Undertale's developer, Toby Fox, made for Earthbound. Ness is missing from the game, so it all must be connected. The problem here is that these are all fairly loose connections. A few bits of dialogue that could be interpreted as Sans being human, a collection of random items, and a fan game are not strong enough evidence to support a version of the Undertale story where Sans, formerly known as Ness, travels through time in a way that should kill him, but instead destroys his skin so that he's stuck in the Undertale world. MatPat's reputation is inexorably linked to this theory. It's free real estate for dunking on him. This theory is the perfect summation of MatPat's approach to quickly moving through loosely connected details in order to force a conclusion while ignoring anything that could contradict it. Just to be clear, I don't have a strong opinion on MatPat. I have a special place in my heart for him since I literally watched him rise to success. I will admit that I was infected by a little bit of Reddit hive mind brain rot, and you know that Reddit hates MatPat because there's nothing that Reddit hates more than someone being wrong. At the end of the day, I don't really have strong opinions about him, even though I don't watch his content as much anymore. But MatPat really messed up when he made his Hollow Knight video. Actually, I don't understand Hollow Knight lore. I played like halfway through the game and then dropped it because that's just what I do. Anyway, people were mad, you get the picture. The last theory I want to talk about is the Wendy theory for The Shining. Eyebrow Cinema has a really good video debunking it, so I recommend that you go watch that, but I'm going to talk about it here because it really shows where fan theories can go wrong. So the Wendy theory essentially takes all the continuity errors for The Shining and constructs a narrative around them that Wendy is actually the crazy one. That's the whole thrust of the theory. It just points out that continuity errors exist and then says, hey look, this proves that Wendy is crazy. Well, it also points out that she reads Catcher in the Rye at the beginning of the movie, which is, watching the movie with this theory in mind makes it so much worse. The tension of this movie comes from being stuck in an abusive relationship with your abuser. The movie is so much harder to read and emotionally interpret from the lens that Wendy is crazy. It actively contradicts the narrative of the movie. Aside from being super flimsy and making the movie worse, the theory claims to make the movie more believable. The problem is that making the movie more believable sounds a whole lot like using language that's commonly used to justify abusers. I can't say how much this reflects a harmful worldview from the originator of this theory, but I've got to say it's not a particularly good look. It also claims to make the movie more believable by eliminating the supernatural from the story. Again, I've got to say, that drives me absolutely nuts. In a fictional movie, you have a hard time believing in the supernatural. Literally anything can happen. It's fiction! Oh look, Luke Skywalker used the Force. It would be way more realistic if that was a dream. Oh look, Doctor Strange is using magic. It must be a dream because magic doesn't exist in real life. We can really see where fan theories break down here. Why can't we just let stories be what they are? How can we justify propagating them when they have a proven track record of making art discussion worse? After a long day of watching fan theories for this video, I went for a walk, frustrated that this line of thought seemed to be the end of the road. If fan theories are just weaker interpretations, then should we police them away? Should we look down on anyone who participates in art discussion in this way? My immediate reaction is no, of course not. It's not like it's morally wrong. So, what is the good of fan theories then?
Was that the bite of 87?
So first, let's take a look at some good theories, and then from there we can extrapolate the value of fan theories based on what the good theories do. I want to start off with a theory that I don't even believe, but I do think it's a good bit of fun in addition to being fairly ubiquitous. That, of course, is the Jar Jar theory. For those who don't know the Jar Jar theory, it works by taking some of the incongruous elements of the prequels and forming them together into a narrative that goes against the default understanding of the Star Wars prequels, but explains away a lot of the problems that people had with them. Jar Jar isn't really a clumsy, obnoxious idiot. His movements may look stupid, but they actually bear a strong resemblance to drunk boxing, which is a technique that makes you look like a fool and confuse your opponent while you attack them. Jar Jar also tends to move his hands in a similar fashion to Jedi mind tricks. It just so happens that he does this at critical times that benefit the master plan of the Sith. There's more to this theory, but that's the gist of it, and it explains away a lot of Jar Jar's obnoxious qualities. The theory speculates that this was George Lucas's original plan, but the backlash against Jar Jar was so strong that he ended up scrapping it. I feel like George would have been thrilled to subvert people's expectations with Jar Jar being a Sith Lord if that was the plan the whole time. It's fun to think about though, isn't it? It's fun to rewatch the prequels with this theory in mind and think about how it changes their meaning. It doesn't have to be true if it gets you to think about the movie in a different light, does it? This theory is coherent enough that if you buy into it, it deepens your engagement with the movie that it discusses. Nobody had really thought of it before, but it was the right combination of being out of left field but believable to take the internet by storm. The theory is straightforwardly fun. Now, I can already hear the counter arguments here. In a lot of ways, this theory functions in a similar way to the Wendy theory. Couldn't you say that the Wendy theory is straightforwardly fun? Sort of. While the Jar Jar theory upends some of the ideas in the film, the Wendy theory basically states that half of the movie didn't happen. The Jar Jar theory says there's more going on than we thought. The Wendy theory says there's less going on than we thought. Okay, So, for the next theory I want to talk about, there is a deeply unfortunate caveat. This theory was written by Max Landis, who did some terrible things, to put it mildly. It might not be a good look that I've enjoyed his work, but I have to confess that anyone who gives advice about creativity makes me go absolutely hog wild. So, why do I feel inclined to talk about this specific theory then? Well, this is a discussion about the value of fan theories, and although it would be my preference never to think about this man again, I do think this is a good example. Please do not take this as an endorsement of his abhorrent behavior. I do have some trepidation talking about this, but at the end of the day, we talk about art made by horrible people all the time. This is not a video about the distinction between art and artist. We are not doing that today. I just needed this example. The theory that I am referring to is entitled A Scar That No One Else Can See. It's mostly a written article, but Max did make a little promotional video for it. The promotional video succinctly captures the joy of making a fan theory. He talks about how we often think we discover something only to find out that we're late to a conversation that's already been hashed out.
You didn't discover anything. You just saw something that everyone had already seen.
This time, though, Max felt that he had truly discovered something. A musician whose work told the same story over and over again. That artist being Carly Rae Jepsen. From there, you're prompted to jump into the essay article thing. It follows Max's journey as he uncovers this theory. First, his friends refer him to Emotion, which is an excellent album. As he becomes an addict, he realizes that there are some phrases that appear repeatedly. The whole album felt sad, even in songs that were supposed to be happy. He tries to figure out what makes Emotion unique and lists out things that this album doesn't talk about that other albums would. Ultimately, he realizes that this album does not sing about reciprocated love. He writes down 7 themes that appear throughout the album. He starts to suspect that these songs fit into a story. The story he finds is a brief, doomed, up and down secret romance with a platonic male friend, ultimately ending in his rejection of her. It's a very specific story, but the more he analyzed, they all fit. That's not too strange overall, though. It's interesting, but Emotion wouldn't be the first concept album ever released. Where the theory gets really fun is when Max keeps going further back into Carly's discography, only to realize that this pattern applies to every single song. Even songs that Carly has covered fit into the pattern. Eventually, it becomes clear that this is a 3-act story. Act 1. Meet the guy and fall head over heels. Act 2. You had a brief romantic encounter and petition that you're supposed to be together. Act 3. You were rejected and you're very upset, but you will love him forever. It's insane how ubiquitous this pattern is. It makes Carly's music very fun to listen to. I was never opposed to Carly's music before stumbling upon this theory. I liked a few of her songs. A Scar That No One Else Can See added so much to it for me though. I had never listened to her albums before, but after reading this theory, I played them on loop. I want to be clear. Carly's work never needed this. Her music is transcendent and beautiful taken at face value, but I was drawn in by this theory. I was able to access the value of these albums through 2 different angles. The music is fire, but the story makes it intriguing. The theory introduced me to albums that I might have skipped otherwise, and I'm better off for it. So again, I want to compare this theory with my collapsible lung theory. What's the difference here? They both presuppose a story onto a body of music. There's also a fair bit of criticism towards this theory, but I haven't seen much good faith criticism. Not that Max has really earned good faith. In the context of this video though, I will defend it by saying that the difference is that the pattern is unavoidable. There are some oddly specific themes that are omnipresent in Carly's work. If Carly deconfirmed the theory, that would almost be weirder. The story boosts your engagement, but it's not the meat of the theory, it's only the synthesis. Nowadays, I don't pay much attention to the pattern, but Carly is easily one of my top 5 favorite artists. I just wish someone else wrote this theory. I'm not even remotely the victim here, but it's so upsetting. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about is Five Nights at Freddy's. In spite of my earlier complaints, these games do have something incredibly cool about them, because they also represent what fan theories can be at their best. So, for anyone who might not know, Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game where you play as a security guard in a Chuck E. Cheese style restaurant with animatronics. The only catch is that these animatronics walk around at night. If they see you, they'll think you're an animatronic endoskeleton and try to stuff you into a suit, which will kill you. It's a bit of a strange story where the gameplay and design elements are there to create an emotional reality rather than be taken seriously. So, On a surface level, there's not much to this story. You're a security guard who has to survive 5 nights at Frederick's. However, there are hints to a deeper story than that. First off, every night you get a phone call from a guy who's supposed to be training you.
Hello. I wanted to record a message for you to help you get settled in on your first night.
He gives you some helpful information, but also drops some hints at the lore of the story. Ominously, he refers to the bite of 87.
There was the bite of 87. It's amazing that the human body can live without the frontal lobe.
He calls you every night, but ultimately dies.
Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room? No. Oh no.
There are also newspapers on the wall. They talk about how the restaurant shuts down due to the death of 5 children, as well as stenches and odors coming from the animatronics, implying that the 5 children were hidden in them. So this little bit of story made people obsessed. People love to find dark secrets hiding around every corner, and this story was no exception. It was a fairly simple story, but the fact that you had to piece it together made it electrifying. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 kicked this storytelling into overdrive. Not only does it include the nightly phone calls, but sometimes when you die, pixelated minigames appear that give you little hints at the story. The minimalist aesthetic, lack of context, and indirect storytelling make for a compelling horror environment. In one of the minigames, you play as the Fox animatronic, known as Foxy. You run up to groups of children at parties 3 times as they all celebrate. The 3rd time you go down the hallway, though, there's a mysterious purple man standing there. When you arrive, the children are all dead. There is another where you play as a little Fredbear and give cake to children. In order to keep them from crying, you give them cake. While this is going on, the Fredbear spells out, "Save him," but a child gets murdered outside and there's nothing you can do about it. There are so many weird details here. The minigames tell a story, but it isn't immediately available to piece together. You have to do some work to figure it out. These mysterious minigames add to the story. There's a direct plot in each minigame that you can follow, but how they piece into the overall story is something that the player has to figure out. It's a fascinating method of storytelling, and it's something that can only be told in this way. If this story were told in a book, it wouldn't be that interesting. What makes it exciting is that we are the ones figuring it out. Or, I guess more accurately, a handful of YouTubers are figuring it out, but that is neither here nor there. Even watching the YouTube theories is fun. The storytelling style of presenting the clues and then piecing them together into a narrative is captivating. Every new entry in the series gives us a new understanding of how the story works. Instead of linear storytelling, we get sporadic storytelling spread out across multiple games. Every new game adds backstory that changes the way we see the entire series. Some may be critical of that aspect, but I actually quite like it. There's something transcendent about little details being added to the story that change its interpretation. We start off with a few story beats, but then expand into this massive, winding narrative. When you start the game, you are merely a security guard trying to survive the night. By the end of the franchise, the story is this crazy serial killer story where this guy named William Afton's son dies, and he tries to figure out the secrets of immortality by killing children and attaching their souls to animatronics, and he plays his other son, or maybe the son that died is brought back to life and you play as him, and William, the father, gets stuck in a suit, and then all of the suits get burned, but William goes to hell and is tortured by his creations. And that all sounds crazy, but it's fun to watch this story unfold. More importantly though, we are the ones unfolding this story. Or I suppose more accurately, your favorite YouTuber is. I know you haven't made a FNAF timeline yourself. Each little piece adds a little more to the story until it's barely recognizable. Engagement with the series is entirely built on fan theories. You can't understand it without dabbling in fan theories. Taking those little pieces and making them into a coherent story is all part of the fun. When a new entry in the series comes out, millions of people are chomping at the bit to find out what new lore has been added.
There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay?
I went on my existential walk trying to figure out what the good of fan theories was. Then it dawned on me. Fan theories are an expression of love. When a work of art compels us, it's only natural that we would want to explore every facet of it. Part of that includes pushing the literal story to its logical limits, or speculating what happens next, or trying to answer the mysteries in the story. That's what fandom is, though. It's to fully engage with a work of art and every facet of it. No nook or cranny of a work of art is safe. A lot of it won't hold up to that scrutiny, but that doesn't mean it's wrong to engage in that way. When I played esports, it seemed that no matter what game people played, they were convinced that it was poorly designed. If you ask a casual fan what they think about the game, they might not see it in the same way. But something about playing the game day in and day out makes you see the cracks in the game's design. In the same way that overanalysis of a game can damage your relationship to it, overanalysis of a story might yield similar results. However, I do not condemn esports, and by the same logic, I cannot condemn fan theories. They are a logical stop in the enjoyment of a work of art. They're a tool for interpretation. That can be a problem if that one tool defines your entire ability to interpret a piece of art, but it still has its place. I was recently discussing Stranger Things with another friend, and the speculative question came up again. Who do you think is going to die in season 5? I didn't mind that question as much that time, though. We happily threw out ideas and played around with the possibilities of different characters dying. Was I a hypocrite for engaging with this question while refusing to engage with my other friend in endgame speculation? I don't think so. We had fun speculating in a way that wouldn't have happened with my other friend. It seemed like my other friend was using speculation as a measuring stick for his own intelligence. If he could guess correctly who died in endgame, it would mean bragging rights and he could hold it over my head if I was wrong. With my other friend, it was just fun to think about Stranger Things. I think to a certain extent, at least for me, it's about how much weight you're putting on that discussion. But it's natural when you enjoy a show to explore the thoughts that come along with it. That's how MatPat frames his theories. He says he just wants you to think about your favorite pieces of media through a different lens.
It's more about listening to the evidence and hearing a good story.
The more I've thought about it, the more I've come to accept this approach. Not that it doesn't have its problems, but I really can't begrudge someone for wanting to do this. Yes, it does create the problem of the overuse of one interpretive tool, but it's a very approachable tool. To be honest, I have a strong suspicion that fan theories played a part in me creating this YouTube channel. Sure, that's not what I do on this channel, but in part, my love for storytelling and interpretation were fueled by fan theories. My goal of trying to find the value of different works of art may have never come to fruition without them. How can I hate the thing that propelled me to create? Fan theories might not all be good, but books, movies, video games, TV shows, and podcasts aren't all good either. Should I throw them all out just because they can be a stupid waste of time? All of these things are trying to be beautiful, and I think there's a place for fan theories within that. Fan theories may have their own problems, but at the end of the day, their value is complex, not void. A study done by Morgan Ellithorpe and Sarah Brooks actually corroborates the value of speculative fan theories. They surveyed people who watched the ending of How I Met Your Mother and found that the people who were exposed to correct fan theories actually enjoyed it more. However, being exposed to incorrect fan theories did not affect people's enjoyment whatsoever. It seems that fan theories prepare the viewer for the end of the story, and that preparation helps them process and interpret it. This is also the justification for why people say spoilers are a good thing. It's also worth noting that fan theories helped people process the end of the show. People love memeing on parasocial relationships, but the truth is that if you enjoy a story, then you will develop a parasocial relationship of some sort. Fan theories soften the blow of that loss. If you're able to correctly predict how the show will end, then you don't take the blow of the loss of that relationship as hard. I suppose I was a fool. Fan theories? MatPat? Will you ever forgive me?
You see, nobody asked for your opinion, and by you giving it anyway, tells us that you want attention.
I think the internet can give you a bit of a skewed perception of value. At the end of the day, fan theories provide value because people value them. Although there are nuances to their value, it's hard to argue that they aren't a net positive. At the end of the day, they're an expression of love for art. I strongly believe that art deepens your engagement with your humanity. To share your enjoyment and put yourself out there with a creative interpretation is a work of moral good. Community engagement is a healthy thing that should be encouraged. Yes, people can be wrong, and the internet loves to topple on people who are wrong. Yes, fan theories can be bad, but art of all sorts can be bad, and that's not a reason to make less of it. There are probably limits to where and when to make fan theories, but ultimately they seem like a force for good. If we want to further the discussion, then we need to let people be wrong. That's how I started out. I owe a lot to fan theories. I want to pretend that I've outgrown the things that I loved before, but perhaps the right thing to do is to accept that they're a part of me. Fan theories have a lot of challenges to overcome. They can be proven wrong, and by their very nature, they go against the default interpretation of a work of art. That's skepticism that a simple storyteller just doesn't have to deal with. That doesn't mean we have to stop being critical, but I think it does mean that when we come across a fan theory that says something genuinely interesting and valuable, we owe a lot of respect to it. For me, although I have lost a lot of interest in fan theories, I wouldn't say it's because I became better. Some combination of pain points and lack of novelty changed my preferences. That's life, though. Relearning the value of fan theories has been a healthy process for me because it's given me an appreciation of the piece that they've played in my life. And that's why Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared takes place in the Matrix.